we have these crossroads. And you know, either way you choose, your life is going to be different.
The universe doesn't exist, but God thinks it does.
We have to stop consuming our culture. We have to create culture.
Stupidity has a definite evolutionary function. I am all for abolishing stupidity, but before it goes, we should pay tribute to it. We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
Little Jesus Christ, Bobby. Little premature on that one. Fucking nerd. You literally hadn't seen nothing yet. Yeah. Hello and welcome to the Nonsense Bazaar. We're your hosts.
Episode 100. Episode 100.
I'm Sequoia Kennedy.
And I'm Willow Truman. I'm very excited.
It's our 100th episode.
It sure is. We did it.
So to celebrate, we're going to be talking about thermonuclear weapons. The hydrogen bomb, the fusion bomb, whatever you want to call it, the biggin. This is an act of chaos magic, and it works because we're doing it.
Okay. All right. I'm not sure in what way, but I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes.
Well,
you've prepared this episode. I know very little.
Simply,
I did watch Dr. Strangelove.
Very good.
At your request.
Yes.
I did it. It was good.
Simply the act of tying a milestone episode to a milestone.
Event.
Stacking symbolism, you understand?
Oh, yes.
It's like... It's like how
we're gonna blow up.
It's like how Biggie said he's blowing up like the World Trade.
Yeah.
We've been drinking some fine 100th episode champagne that friend of the show Emily sent us.
We have been.
So thank you, Emily.
Yes. What a great way to take us into this episode.
Yeah. Drinking champagne and talking about the bomb.
We also ate enchiladas.
We did, and they were delicious.
So I'm gonna be making a bomb later.
So yeah, we're talking nuclear weapons here. But we're not talking about the Manhattan Project. Fat Man, Little Boy.
I don't know what that means, but...
Fat Man and Little Boy?
No.
Those are the names of the...
That's us.
The two atomic bombs.
I'm Fat Man. You're Little Boy.
I'm Little Boy? All right.
I'm Fat Man. Come on. There's no way I'm Little Boy.
That's true. If we're Fat Man and Little Boy, you're definitely Fat Man and I'm definitely Little Boy. Yeah. Those were the two bombs we dropped on Japan at the end of World War II.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm neither of those.
Yeah. And like, if any of you don't know what the Manhattan Project is, like, I'm sorry, but we're just not the people who should break that to you. But when people think about nuclear weapons, what pops into their heads usually is the end of the Second World War and the dual nuclear strikes on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Mm-hmm. Right? And as horrifying and awful as those things were, well, the shit we made right afterwards, it makes the atomic bomb look like TNT. Almost quite literally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was only 7 years after Hiroshima and Nagasaki that we invented the second generation nuclear weapons.
Gotta level up.
Yeah, very quickly. Mm-hmm. Very, very quickly. And these are, well, atomic bombs like Fat Man and Little Boy. You can wrap your head around them. You know, they split the atom, energy's released, it goes boom, big boom, real big boom. You know.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. In World War II, we did more damage during the firebombing of Tokyo and Dresden, to name a couple, than the atomic bomb did to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Its power was in the fact that it was just one bomb. But that level of destruction had certainly been seen before. It just previously had taken many more bombs in many hours.
Uh-huh.
You know? Right after World War II, at the very beginning of the Cold War, we very quickly, within 7 years from Hiroshima, had weapons that made the atomic bomb utterly obsolete. And these weapons, thermonuclear bombs, or hydrogen bombs, are on a scale that is basically impossible to comprehend. Fat Man, the largest of the two atomic bombs used in World War II, well, it had a blast yield equivalent to 21.5 kilotons of TNT. That's 2,200 pounds of TNT times 1,000 times 21.5. Big boom.
At a certain point, numbers just become incomprehensible, right?
Think of a big fucking pallet of TNT. Like a big one, about as tall as me and about like me squared.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
It's not accurate, but you get the gist. Call that a ton. 1,000 of those.
Okay.
Times 21.5. That's what we dropped on Nagasaki. In one fat man.
Okay.
Right? Less than 10 years later.
So like the size of one super Walmart.
A floor of a super Walmart that is just pallets of TNT.
Yeah.
But it's in one bomb the size of half this living room.
Right.
Yeah. Like, it's a real big boom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Less than 10 years later, however, the United States would test the most powerful hydrogen bomb it ever has, the Castle Bravo test, which we will talk about later on. Castle Bravo had an explosive yield of around 15 megatons of TNT. That's a pallet of me squared, a 6'3" man, for shits and giggles, times 1 million. Mm-hmm. That's a 1,000,000 times 15. So that's about 500 super Walmarts.
Wow. Is there anything more American than measuring bombs in Walmarts?
There really isn't. It's a great measurement. I have no idea how accurate it is. It's probably not at all, but like, it's perfect.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
I understand it as a rough size.
Well, right, because like, here's the thing. 100 or
They're large.
one super Walmart, the floor is just pallets of TNT.
Yeah, include the parking lot too, maybe?
No, not for the atomic bomb. No.
Just the Walmart.
Yeah, just the Walmart, a super Walmart.
Yeah.
Yeah, the floor is just covered in TNT, 6 feet tall. Mm-hmm. You can kind of wrap your head around that.
Yeah.
Like, it's stupid.
Right, but I can wrap my head around that amount.
Can you wrap your head around 500 of those Walmarts?
Not really.
No, you really can't. That's a lot of fucking TNT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like the size of a town.
Yeah. About 500 times as powerful as the bomb dropped on Nagasaki. But that's not even the most powerful weapon ever tested. Fuck no. That honor goes to the Soviet Union with their Tsar Bomba, which rocked 50 megatons of TNT. So that's like... it's just
Could wipe out all of New England.
It's 1,700 fucking Walmarts of TNT.
Yeah.
You know, it's just so goddamn stupid. No, but it's
Could wipe
okay.
out Texas.
No, we'll get to the size of the damage and shit. Now, both of these bombs are too big and silly to use today, the Tsar Bomba and Castle Bravo. But don't worry, we've got all sorts of fancy new tech that can just end shit. Yeah. But here's another way to think about hydrogen bombs. Now, we're going to be throwing around a lot of terms today, one of which is fission versus fusion, okay?
Okay.
Fission, like a fissure in the ground, is splitting an atom, that the energy gets released, and that splits some more atoms, and that releases energy that splits some more atoms.
Fission minus, fusion plus.
Yeah. The atomic bombs at the end of World War II were fission bombs, where they basically just split plutonium. Mm-hmm. They just split plutonium fucking atoms, and that split some more atoms, and it made a big boom. So fusion bombs, thermonuclear bombs, they use nuclear fusion just like the sun. You're using isotopes of hydrogen, and the energy released when you smash those fuckers together and fuse some shit out of it fuses more shit, and it's more energy, bigger chain reaction, blah, blah, blah. But fusion bombs, thermonuclear bombs, they use fission bombs, first generation, Hiroshima. They use those as the first stage of the bomb.
That's very interesting.
Like a cap on a 50 caliber black powder rifle. You know, you're like, or like a flintlock. Mm-hmm. You know, you pull the trigger in the old Civil War movies, and the hammer hits and it makes a spark that goes down the tube. In this case, we're using a nuclear bomb as the spark that goes down the tube. Okay. Which is insane. The primer of the weapon is a nuclear bomb. Okay. That's what we're dealing with. Mm-hmm. We had them 7 years after the end of World War II. And that's what our nuclear arsenal is. It's simply not the things that ended World War II. We kind of still think of them, though. Except for the mushroom cloud, we do think of hydrogen bomb mushroom clouds because they're much more spectacular and eerily beautiful. But I have a point in bringing this to the nonsense bazaar. I do. What's clearly fucking nonsense. It's clearly just the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. But see, whereas the atomic bomb was a really big, fancy radioactive bomb, The hydrogen bomb basically creates a small star where a city used to be. It's something else. It represents something else. The hydrogen bomb is, in my estimation, paranormal weaponry. Not in that they did it with magic. You dumb fucks. I'm making a poetic statement. It is cosmic horror made manifest.
It is, though.
Not only can it break the world, but it broke what we previously considered to be reality. And it happened at a very interesting time. The first hydrogen bomb test occurred in late 1952. We've seen that year before. Many times, in fact. This is the year MKUltra was born.
Mm-hmm.
This is the year that Puharich made first contact with the Nine.
Interesting.
This is the year Jack Parsons died.
Mm-hmm.
His own contributions to blowing shit up would be the means by which the hydrogen bomb got its final terrifying garnish, the intercontinental ballistic missile. And when I read about all these things, I'm struck by the lack of attention paid to the sheer existence of the hydrogen bomb. We're 70 years or so away from it, but in the back half of the 20th century, the end of days wasn't only possible, it was imminent. And the means by which it would happen, well, we invented that shit last week. If we lose control, everything dies. The back half of the 20th century all happens in the shadow of Vesuvius.
Mm-hmm.
It also didn't really need to happen. The way this thing came about, or maybe it absolutely did need to happen, because the way this thing came about is quite different than the heroic efforts of scientists to end the terrible World War.
That's not what this was.
No. Edward Teller just had a huge rock-hard erection for the thermonuclear bomb.
Yeah, so more like a let's see what we can do sort of spirit, rather than we need to do this.
More like this dude whined for years until it happened.
Guys, I want to make a really big weapon.
Kinda. That's kind of exactly what happened.
It'll be so cool.
There's more, but man, this fucking guy. Well, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
But first, I wrote into the script, let's crack this fucking champagne, but we already did that. Let's pull a tarot card.
Yes.
I forgot my tarot deck. This is yours. Do you want to do it?
Do you want me to?
I don't know. It feels like we're using your deck. Yeah, you should just do it. Think about the big boom.
Big boom. Yeah. Two of Wands.
Okay. Fair enough.
The man contemplating orb.
I mean, it's Two of Wands is it's Hokmah in Absolute. It's the first spark. Is the ace being like the representation of Kether, the unmanifest. It's the first manifestation of fire, which is quite appropriate. I was really hoping for death, but like I don't think there's any more appropriate card in actuality than the Two of Wands.
Two of Wands actually makes a lot of sense because it's this guy in a violet robe and he's got a red hat and he's looking out his stone balcony at a beautiful view.
It's the surveillance of the kingdom before the building of the walls.
Right. And he's holding in his hand a circle that looks very much like a globe. Yeah. Except it's not really colored like a globe. It's green and pink. Yeah. But it looks like a globe and he's contemplating it. Yeah. I mean, and this makes sense.
It does. I mean, it's the first step of the conquering drive of wands, of fire. It's the first step of the conqueror. Yeah. And yeah, that's rather apt. Good Christ. Well, we will talk about that at the end of the episode.
That we will.
I guess first we should talk about... I talked a little shit about the atomic bomb in the intro. Kind of diminished it. It shouldn't really be diminished.
Oh, God, no.
No.
It's
real fucked up.
Yeah.
What happens... the first thing that happens when a nuke goes off is a flash of light. That's the most damaging shit, is the heat from that light. And it happens so fast and it's so bright that I talk about one of the survivors of Hiroshima. Oh, just saw his sister get hit. And even the thinnest piece of clothing would protect you because it was so fast. So it'd be like under just like a very thin shirt or something, you'd be fine. But the skin of your hands would be melting off. Jesus. Yeah. And then you'd probably get cancer if you survived that because like radiation's a whole fucking thing. Right. Right. So not to diminish that. No. You don't want it. Yeah, you don't want it. Let's talk about the guy who decided to do that. Harry Truman. Yeah. Yeah. No relation to me. No relation. Fucking Harry Truman. I'm a little hairy. You're a little hairy. You're a little true. Yeah. I'm a little man. I'm a fat man. You're a fat man. I'm a little boy. Yeah. Fucking Harry Truman. This guy, dude. This dude was not supposed to be president. Like, he was only very recently made vice president to FDR in FDR's fourth term, who then fucked off and died, leaving Harry Truman to preside over the end of the war. And this was in contrast to first Vice President Henry Wallace, who's also part of the Round Table Foundation, apparently, which is fucking wild, who was like very much beloved and very much like FDR's right-hand man through political maneuvering. Like they threw in this junior senator from fucking Missouri. Before a senator, this man was a hat salesman. Harry Truman was? Yeah. He's a fucking haberdasher. Was he good at it? Sure. Good enough to become a senator, apparently. This is a haberdasher from Missouri. If you can translate your skills as a hat salesman into becoming president, sure. I don't know if he did. It seems like, is he one of those people that just like somehow failed upwards? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I love that archetype. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing to love about Harry Truman. No, I know. There's really nothing to love about him. He's a fucking haberdasher. And it's just like, it's such an unlikable archetype. Yeah. He's not a genius. He's not a great leader. He's not, a capital G, capital M great man. He wasn't even elected to the office. He's literally just some guy. Yeah. A true man, if you will. If you will. If you will. And he has to make the call whether to drop the atomic bomb or not. It's intensely poetic. Yeah. I'm not going to say meaningful or, whatever, but it's intensely poetic. Well, I'm sure that the Truman Show is also named that for a reason. Yeah. Well, he decides to do it. And he does it. And he announces it to the world. Let's run over here and get a look at this guy.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima.
It's a fucking haberdasher.
And destroyed its usefulness to the enemy. That bomb has more power than 20,000 tons of TNT. The Japanese began the war from the air at Pearl Harbor. They have been repaid many-fold, and the end is not yet. With this bomb, we have now added a new and revolutionary increase in destruction to supplement the growing power of our armed forces. In their present form, these bombs are now in production, and even more powerful forms are in development. It is an atomic bomb. It is a harnessing of the basic power of the universe. The force from which the sun draws its power has been loosed against those who brought war to the Far East.
Sequoia. This man is somehow making some of the coolest possible sounding dialogue sound so fucking lame. Yep. He sounds like a principal delivering the morning announcements.
That's what he looks like, too.
Yes.
No, but now, see, here's the thing. You have...
The banality of it, it makes it kind of more creepy, though.
Yes, yes.
And also more funny.
Yes, definitely. But you have the context and knowledge of history.
Right.
That wasn't the first time you've heard about the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
That was America's first time hearing about the atomic bomb. Their president just comes on the TV and says that. The president who wasn't elected.
Yeah.
Like, what the... I'm sorry.
What are you doing,
What?
sir?
What the fuck do we
Pardon?
have?
Can you repeat that? Can you sound a little more enthusiastic?
I mean, like, he does go on for fucking 2 more minutes, but, like, it's fine. Like, he repeats it, sure, but... Yeah.
Like, it deserves a little bit more, like, power.
You kind of want him to be like, we just fucking did this shit. We brought down the sun, you know?
Yeah.
You don't want him to say it like that.
No.
They have been repaid many-fold.
And today for lunch, we're having chicken tenders.
And then we'll harness the basic power of the universe.
Yes.
So Ramer Schreiber, a Los Alamos physicist, Los Alamos is the lab that developed the atomic bomb. He had this to say.
Felt kind of like you were caught out in the street without any clothes on. I mean, we were so accustomed to having this all so hush-hush, to have it all out in the public took a little getting used to. This was also the time one realized that it would be impossible to simply say, those are fine gadgets. They ended the war, now let's just lock everything up and forget about it. Really, one had to live with this situation from here on.
Yeah. Because you have to imagine, like, a lot of these physicists were probably just like, we're building this thing, we're going to end the war. That'll be it, right? That'll be it.
Sometimes you open a door and you can't seal it shut again.
Right.
You know?
Richard Feynman, famous quantum physicist who had left Los Alamos to tend to his wife Arlene, who was dying of tuberculosis, wrote this in his journal.
No monopoly, no defense, no security until we have control on a world level. Other people are not being hindered in the development of the bomb by any secrets we are keeping. Soon, they will be able to do Columbus, Ohio, and hundreds of cities like it, what we did to Hiroshima. And we scientists are clever, too clever. Are you not satisfied? Is 4 square miles and 1 bomb not enough? Men are still thinking. Just tell us how big you want it.
Yeah. The Hiroshima and Nagasaki were like 4 square miles of destruction. Yeah. J. Robert Oppenheimer, tall, rail-thin, chain-smoking, the head of Manhattan Project, the father of the atomic bomb, an extraordinary man, as a colleague would describe him in 1947, who worked very hard and always seemed to be on the verge of a nervous breakdown.
Oh, kind of like someone I know.
There's similarities, for sure. He's much smarter than me, though. He wrote a friend 2 weeks after the war had ended, writing, quote, "You will believe that this undertaking has not been without its misgivings. They are heavy on us today, when the future, which has so many elements of high promise, is yet only a stone's throw away from despair." He told an audience a year later, "We were rightly and somewhat desperately concerned that these weapons should be manifest to all men to see and understand, that they might know what future war would be. It would not have been a better world if the unrealized possibility of these terrible weapons had been a secret shadow on our future." He does have an ear for poetry.
Yeah. I mean, that's nice. It's like, if we're going to have these huge weapons of mass destruction, maybe we should let people know about it.
Yeah, I mean, he has a point. Like,
there are reasons not to, and there are reasons for it.
I think there's absolutely reasons. I'm of the mind that it's a collective burden on humanity.
Totally.
Yeah. So World War II was pretty amazing for the U.S. in terms of geopolitical standing. It's what launched the U.S. to be the superpower. Mm-hmm. Like, basically because we were the only ones whose shit wasn't all fucked up. Essentially. Like, of the Northern Hemisphere powers, we were the only ones whose shit wasn't all fucked up. And we built the bomb. Okay. Yeah, we weren't. I mean,
shit's fucked up, but not as fucked up.
Well, no, after World War II.
Yeah.
Europe was a smoking rubble.
Exactly.
We're
not that fucked up.
We were doing great.
Comparatively.
Our industry was ramped the fuck up. We were in military economy mode.
Yep.
We built the bomb. You know? The U.S. was sitting pretty.
It's true. And there's a reason why the nuclear family was called...
in 1950.
Yeah.
So it was sort of inevitable that we'd end up running shit. And it was also sort of inevitable that we'd come into a conflict with the Soviet Union, who were the other, I wouldn't even call them big winners. It's just like they ended in a good political position. If not, they just didn't care about throwing people away.
Yeah, less scathed. Perhaps.
They were the other on track to being the other superpower. And they were also the global center of communism, which was this was a big watershed moment for communism as well, right? Like this newish political philosophy overthrew the fucking Russian Tsar in the First World War and then becomes one of the two controlling powers of Europe after the second.
Right.
And it's this brand new alien ass way of living and thinking and structuring society. And whenever this has happened before in history, those two powers end up going to war against each other. Every time. Oh, yeah. Every time. However, this would be the first time that those two powers weren't like next to each other. They're on the other side of the fucking world. But the US has all its troops stationed all throughout Europe. So does the Soviet Union. We're right up against them like that. It's a giant clusterfuck. It's in at once. We've seen this so many times before, and at the same time, this has never happened before. It's wild. I mean, the 20th century is. What can you say? The 20th century is wild. You know.
I mean, it is though, because up until that point, how many world wars had there been?
Just
20th century. We got 2 of them.
I mean, there was one at the beginning and then one in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah. When then a third that lasted through the back half.
Yeah.
Essentially.
And it's like, well, when had that happened in history before?
Right. Like, I mean, there's a way to look at like Korea and Vietnam as battles in the Third World War, you know, which is real fucked up. But being that conflict with the Soviets seemed not just likely, but inevitable. Right at the end of the Second World War, we were already thinking about how we were going to fuck up Russia.
Yeah.
Fuck up the USSR. A document titled A Strategic Chart of Certain Russian and Manchurian Urban Areas had gone to Brigadier General Leslie R. Groves, who was the head of the Manhattan Project. It was already on his desk on August 30th, 1945. The document identified the important cities of the Soviet Union and Manchuria, because China was very, very recently, I believe, 4 years or so, like into their communist revolution. The document identified the important cities of the Soviet Union and Manchuria and charted their area, population, industrial capacities, and target priority. Like, we had everything lined up. There was an appendix that estimated how many atomic bombs would be needed to destroy each city. 6 each for Moscow and Leningrad, now St. Petersburg. A map centered on the North Pole accompanied the chart around the world from bases in Nome, Alaska, Stavanger, Norway, Bremen, Germany, Foggia, Italy, Crete, Lahore, India, and Okinawa.
So basically, how to wipe out major centers.
What we have,
world,
how do we use our, we have all these air bases. How do we just erase the Soviet Union?
Yeah.
Yeah, how can we just get rid of them? B-29 flight paths and overlaid, segments of radar sweeps to cover the USSR. Yeah, we were just ready. Which is fucked. And some of the U.S. generals advocated for just straight up immediately marching on the Soviet Union and keeping the war going. And the Soviets were pretty sure the same thing was inevitable. And we could have too. That's the thing. We probably could have. Should we have? No, probably not. Would have been, who the fuck knows what would have happened. That would have got ugly.
Yeah.
But who knows? That's you play the game of what if with history. Now, at this time, and what this all hinged on was that the Soviets did not yet have the bomb. But since American, British, German, and Russian scientists had been the brightest minds in physics since the discovery of potential nuclear power in 1910, because it had been those countries. It had been Russia, Germany, England, and the US, which is wild, right? Because why didn't Germany ever actually make the bomb? Because they were too embroiled in war. It would have been a waste of fucking resources. That's the reason.
Yeah.
Sure, they wanted to, but they couldn't divert the funds. Soviet Union doesn't have nearly as much money. Britain's all fucking bombed to shit. Soviet Union lost how many millions of people? None of them are in ship shape enough to build a nuclear bomb, except for the U.S.
God,
but in any other circumstance, it could have been any one of them.
In my head, I'm almost thinking about America, the Soviet Union, and all of these world players as if they're just a bunch of people.
Yeah, that's how you should think about it.
And we're just in this really fucking toxic codependent relationship with them. And it's like, I'm building up my arsenal of backlogs of weaponry so that when we get into conflict, I can whip it out and drop the bomb on you. Like, and it's what people do in like toxic partnerships and relationships. They build up their arsenal of weaponry about the other person of conflict to like bring forward as soon as like shit blows up. And all of a sudden it's like that thing from, 14 months ago that you haven't thought about and thought you were over is like, nope, that's been in the back pocket and we're going to drop it now strategically.
That time you held the shopping basket in an embarrassing fashion in the Whole Foods.
Yeah, no, but it is kind of like that. Like, we're in this fucking toxic relationship where it's like, I need to be prepared to hurt you in case you hurt me first.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, basically. Fucking A. But as it was, we didn't think anyone else could build the bomb at that point.
Yeah. Nobody could be as smart as us.
Well, what we didn't know, the thing we didn't know is that there had been Soviet spies at Los Alamos, the lab where the bomb was developed, since the word go. There had just been Soviet spies the whole time. The whole fucking time. The U.S. believed the Soviets were still decades away from the bomb. Like 30 years at the minimum. And that was like the you're crazy, they're not that smart estimate. 30 years. In reality, it would be 4 years till America's nuclear hegemony was challenged.
Didn't take long.
Not at all. None of this takes very long at all. Well, like I said, it's not like the Russians had no claim to the power of the atom, right? Like Russian interest in nuclear energy went back to 1910 when Vladimir Vernadsky told the Russian Academy of Sciences, quote, new sources of atomic energy exceeding by millions of times all the sources of energy that the human imagination has envisaged. I don't know how to say that word in relation regarding the power of splitting the atom. Mm-hmm. Do you recognize that name, Vladimir Vernadsky?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, it's a name that shows up a lot. He's the noosphere guy.
Yeah,
it's all one big bullshit stew, dude. It's all the same fucking story. Mm. It blows my mind. Yeah, 1945, Soviet spies, including Klaus Fuchs and Harry Gold, had passed a complete schematic of the plutonium implosion bomb that Fat Man had been designed after to their Soviet intelligence handlers. And before the U.S. was even aware of it, the nuclear arms race was on. Immediately after the war, some of the scientists who had worked on developing the atomic bomb weren't exactly satisfied with what they had accomplished. They wanted to go further. Chief among this cadre was a dude named Edward Teller. And I'm going to say this right here. Out of all the people I've ever researched and wrote about, I think I hate Edward Teller the most.
Really?
Yeah. Just like sheer contempt.
Okay.
Not even a love to hate.
Yeah.
Like not that.
Okay.
Right.
Because we have a lot of love to hates.
I love a love to hate. Yeah,
there's a lot of people I hold contempt for that we've covered on the podcast, but I'm still like, right. I'd have a beer with you.
Right. No, Edward Teller. This dude isn't even a villain. He's just an asshole. Mm. Yeah, like a true dickhead.
Worse.
Yeah. Like he was just mean to people and took credit for things he didn't deserve. And like, yeah, I know we're talking I don't like that. And yeah,
like a bully.
Yeah.
I'm also in my head relating a lot of this to like playground politics.
As you should.
Like the politics of the schoolyard.
Sure.
Of kids that's
tossing
the ball around.
How you think about geopolitics.
Yeah, it's a way of like making it more familiar.
Yeah.
And making it smaller.
Abstracting it to build a model.
Yeah. Because that is kind of what it is. I mean, these are people who are making these choices and who are communicating with each other and who are behind these big events.
Yeah.
And at one point, those people were on the schoolyard.
Yeah, these are just people dealing with situations that are too big for them to comprehend correctly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so fuck Edward Teller. He's just a huge asshole. And like, I know we're talking about things of much greater significance and shit, but like, look, the head of the Manhattan Project, J. Robert Oppenheimer, a real weirdo, like a truly compelling character, quoting the Bhagavad Gita and shit. That's how I want my nuclear weapon inventors.
Yes.
Especially the big one, right? It'd be better if Edward Teller was like this maniacal arch villain. If he was actually Dr. Strangelove.
I wish.
But he's just an asshole. And was notoriously an asshole. For instance, On the rare occasions when he would hang out with the other scientists and join their poker game, his fellow scientists said he coincidentally always forgot his wallet and borrowed money for the buy-in from someone else. And then lost it all, like, in the second hand.
How about that?
That's the guy we're dealing with.
My God.
Yeah. Since 1941, Teller had this idea for what he called the super, as in the super bomb. In correspondence about the super, it starts getting referred to as Campbell's, as in soup.
Yeah.
Super. Campbell's soup. Mm-hmm. Fun times, a bunch of fucking chuckleheads we got here.
Wow.
Edward Teller was a Hungarian immigrant who fucking hated communists. Having fled the communist dictatorship in Hungary. He was invited to be part of the Manhattan Project at the outset, but as early as 1941, Teller and Italian Enrico Fermi had been discussing the prospects of using a nuclear fission bomb like the ones at Hiroshima and Nagasaki to trigger a fusion reaction. This was Teller's pet idea and the thing that he would just not fucking let go at all, ever. Mm-hmm. Like 4 years before Hiroshima and Nagasaki, this dude's saying, we can do a bigger thing.
I want to make the super.
I want to make the super. I had the idea for the super. It's the best idea anyone's ever had. Like, I have to do it. I have to do it. It's my thing.
I want to make big boom.
I want to make big boom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, that's what it is.
Literally. I mean, this dude's throwing tantrums and stuff.
I want to make the biggest boom.
That's the attitude he had. And I swear, and it's like, I'm not even exaggerating. Like, there's literally no other way to talk about this man's attitude than that.
Right. At its core, that is what it is.
Yeah, when you
like strip away all of the fat, at the very center, it's the desire to make the biggest boom.
Here's the thing with Edward Teller. That's literally what you get on the outside too.
Yeah.
He's just throwing tantrums and just like every other side's like, dude, your design doesn't work. It's just, it doesn't work. He's like, no, it has to work. It's the best thing ever. Like, he's just an asshole. As soon as the war was over, it was time to think about what the future of atomic weaponry might be, though, because of course, what else are you going to do? You just demonstrated this thing like, well, how can we make it better? Teller's super idea was a known quantity. It was definitely known that this wasn't the ceiling of atomic weapons. It wasn't a revolutionary idea to propose that. The question was, should we go further? Mm-hmm. That was the question they were debating. On August 17th, 1945, Oppenheimer and a few other scientists delivered a letter to the Secretary of War, Henry Stimson, that read in part,
"We are convinced that weapons, quantitatively and qualitatively far more effective than now available, will result from further work on these problems. Nevertheless, we have grave doubts that this further development can contribute essentially or permanently to the prevention of war. We believe that the safety of this nation cannot lie wholly or even primarily in its scientific or technical prowess. It can be based only on making future wars impossible." Good luck.
Meeting directly with President Truman, Oppenheimer bemoaned, "I feel we have blood on our hands."
Oh, you think?
Well, in one retelling, Truman replied, "Never mind, it'll all come out in the wash."
Next time it rains.
In another, he just takes a handkerchief out of his pocket and throws it at him. Because in Truman's mind, like, you have blood on your hands, motherfucker? I made the decision, right?
Yeah.
Apparently,
I gave the announcement. Yeah.
Truman wrote that Oppenheimer was a quote, crybaby scientist who came to my office and spent most of his time wringing his hands and telling me they had blood on them because of the discovery of atomic energy. Apparently, he told his chief of staff, "I don't ever want to see that fucking cretin in my office ever again." They did not get along. They were very different men.
Yeah. I mean, I think they both had valid guilt.
Absolutely.
It's like...
Harry Truman seems like he doubled down on the man of his age in 1945 aspect. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, I did what I had to do.
I was just thinking those exact words, because that is exactly that mindset.
Yeah.
Of like, it's a very generational thing. It's like, you do what you have to do.
Truman got defensive about it.
Yeah.
Oppenheimer was getting emotional and Truman got defensive. I mean, Oppenheimer has his own problems too. Like, he would vacillate back and forth. He was a very unstable character. Mm-hmm. And I do not envy the place that Harry Truman was put in, even if I think he's just a fucking haberdasher and a school principal.
Yeah.
He's the school lunch of presidents.
He's the school principal of America.
That might have been Eisenhower, though.
Yeah.
Like, Eisenhower's the cool gym teacher.
He's the principal attendant or whatever.
The vice principal.
Yeah.
God. Wait, the principal attendant?
Yeah, that's
superintendent?
The superintendent.
Superintendent. Well, Truman had asked Oppenheimer how long he thought it would take the Soviets to develop the bomb. Oppenheimer, not knowing what was a rhetorical question, answered with the standard a couple decades, to which Truman replied, like, I'll tell you when. Never. And Oppenheimer's like, I didn't know we were doing the rhetorical thing here, but okay. He thought that the Soviets couldn't, and we wouldn't let them ever develop the bomb.
Yeah.
And because of this prevailing attitude towards the Soviets' ability to develop the bomb, the prevailing attitude as to whether we should develop the super bomb amongst the Los Alamos scientists and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, although generally more so among the scientists, was that one, well, yeah, if Russia's decades away from being able to build a nuclear bomb, if they ever manage it, it's a couple decades, and two, the super bomb could be made, but like, actually, fuck that. It's immoral. That was the prevailing attitude.
Yeah.
Like, we could. We shouldn't. And Edward Teller's just like, but I want my bomb.
Yeah.
Literally, there's no reason to do it, and he's just really wants to do it still. You know, generally speaking, that was at least the attitude that won out immediately following the war. In October 1945, Oppenheimer left Los Alamos, along with many of the other Manhattan Project scientists. Now, Oppenheimer was a deeply conflicted man. It's almost impossible to square some of his attitudes regarding the development of the bomb. But then, I kind of feel like this is the most honest and most human way to see the damn thing. Having these conflicted opinions that don't actually square with each other.
Well, that's just life.
That's life.
You know?
Like, he's not faking anything. He's not putting on a front. He's conflicted.
When you deal with difficult things, you have many different, like, opinions.
Yeah, you can't just put on the dad act, the principal act, and just double, you know.
Right.
Well, in a speech on his last day at Los Alamos, Oppenheimer expressed pride in the work they had done, but said,
"Today that pride must be tempered with a profound concern. If atomic bombs are to be added as new weapons to the arsenals of a warring world, or to the arsenals of nations preparing for war, then the time will come when mankind will curse the names of Los Alamos and of Hiroshima. The peoples of this world must unite, or they will perish."
Now, Oppenheimer had encouraged Edward Teller to leave Los Alamos as well. A colleague recalled what Teller had told him about their conversation.
In this conversation, for the first time in my recollection, he expressed himself as terribly pessimistic about relations with Russia. He was terribly anti-communist, terribly anti-Russian. Teller said we had to continue research on nuclear weapons. It was really wrong of us all to want to leave. The war was not over, and Russia was just as dangerous an enemy as Germany had been.
It's like everyone's like packing up to go. You guys can't leave now. The party's just starting.
Yeah.
But Russia's as bad an enemy as Germany ever was. What are you talking about? We gotta keep going. Teller had a personal stake. The super bomb was his baby. He literally would not ever shut the fuck up about how cool it would be to have something thousands of times more powerful than what they already had.
We can't give up now. Come on. It'll be so cool.
Yeah, and at the time, the morality of the country didn't give a fuck about Teller's cool idea. You know, it's kind of weird that he really cared much more about just building his cool thing than all the people that just died.
Yeah.
You know? He's not even like faking caring.
Yeah.
He's just like that archetype of that amoral scientist. A panel of scientists advised continuing the research into nuclear fusion. It wasn't just Teller, a panel of scientists advised continuing the research into nuclear fusion, but against the development of thermonuclear weapons, of fusion weapons. Physicist Arthur Compton, in a letter to Henry Wallace, wrote,
"We feel that this development should not be undertaken, primarily because we should prefer defeat in war to a victory obtained at the expense of the enormous human disaster that would be caused by its determined use."
Yeah, like we should rather be destroyed than want to win a war like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand why you asked me to watch Dr. Strangelove.
Exactly. Yeah.
All of these conversations just being talked about.
Yeah. Dr. Strangelove is an allegory for all of this.
Yeah.
Except for the end.
Yep.
Which is interesting. We'll get there.
Can I?
Now, Teller dissented, of course, and he now revised his estimates of how soon it could be produced as little as 5 years. Like, we can do it in 5 years. I'll get you a super in 5 years. Assuming, of course, at least 12 nuclear tests a year. And also, I mean, if we could do it that soon, like then the Russians could probably do, I don't know, let me just throw out a bullshit number because I really want to be somebody. They could have it as little as 2 years after they develop fission bombs. What's more, he added, but I consider a certainty that the super bomb will allow us to extend our power over natural phenomena far beyond anything we can at present imagine.
Does Edward Teller remind you at all of Elon Musk a little bit? Like, man, I can see it, except they're different. No, yeah, they're they're different colors. Mm-hmm. Teller's smarter than Elon. Definitely.
Teller was pretty fucking smart, but less charisma.
They have a similar hubris.
Teller has zero charisma.
Yeah.
Elon, as off-putting as he is, has a much higher charisma score. Mm-hmm. You know?
He has fanboys.
Exactly. Teller has no fanboys.
Right. His
friends even hated him.
But his hubris and his vision of his place in changing the world and changing it and shaping the future is very similar.
He wants to be a great man.
Yes. He wants to be an extraordinary man who alters the course of history.
Right, like
and human development.
I don't think it's Dan Carlin's term, but the capital G great man.
Right, that's what he seeks to be.
Stalin, Hitler, FDR, these Oppenheimer even. Teller's
Musk wishes.
Musk wishes. Teller wishes. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think either of them. Well, I know Teller didn't because he's fucking dead now. Yeah. I don't think Muskie Boy's going to do it either.
No, but he reminds me of him in that way.
Yeah, I agree.
If I had to make like a 21st century analog that we could like compare his...
Yeah. I feel like there's probably a better, less visible one.
Probably, yeah.
Well, like I said, the prevailing morality of the time went against Teller's bullshit. But the pendulum of morality do have a tendency to swing now, don't it?
It does. It goes back and forth and back and forth.
That would happen in 1949. The generally accepted wisdom that was that Russia didn't have a bomb, couldn't build a bomb, it's fine. Despite that, the U.S. did enact rudimentary radiation detecting systems, just in case. Just in case. It's one of those things where you forget people back then didn't have the technology we do now. Yeah. Which it seems like a very stupid thing to say, but like nowadays, if, say, North Korea tests a nuke, everyone knows instantly. Right? Satellites, imaging and shit. We just know stuff now.
Back then, not so much.
Right. They didn't have that. So it was actually really difficult to know if anyone had tested any nukes, which is kind of terrifying.
I mean, think about how easy it was to just get away with murder back then, too.
Yeah. Yeah. You just do it. Yeah. It's kind of terrifying, just like not knowing if your enemy is testing nukes or not.
Yeah.
Right. One of the detection methods the U.S. built was planes outfitted with radiation sniffers, little scoops to collect particulate in the clouds to see if there's any radiation up in there. While you're flying through the clouds, just scooping up shit, saying, hey, does that shit glow?
Scoop that cloud.
Yeah, well, what do you know? August 29th, 1949, the Soviets detonated their first atomic test at Semipalatinsk 21 in Kazakhstan. It was called First Lightning, which is a cool name.
Yeah.
There's a quote right underneath that.
Word. The white fireball engulfed the tower and the shop, and, expanding rapidly, changing color, it rushed upwards. The blast wave at the base, sweeping in its path structures, stone houses, machines, rolled like a billow from the center, mixing up stones, logs of wood, pieces of metal and dust into one chaotic mess. The fireball, rising and revolving, turned orange, red. Then dark streaks appeared, streams of dust. Fragments of brick and board were drawn in after it, as into a funnel. Overtaking the firestorm, the shock wave, hitting the upper layers of the atmosphere, passed through several levels of inversion, and there, as in a cloud chamber, the condensation of water vapor began. A strong wind weakened the sound, and it reached us like the roar of an avalanche.
On September 3rd, a U.S. sniffer plane picked up radioactivity, determined to be fission-derived. By September 14th, U.S. intelligence had concluded with 95% certainty that the Soviets had, in fact, tested a nuclear bomb. Oh shit.
Better get on it, boys.
Many could not believe it, because with what they knew about Soviet engineering, they shouldn't have been able to. But they did, because, as I mentioned earlier, there had been spies in and around the Manhattan Project since the get-go.
Yeah.
Including scientist Klaus Fuchs, who had provided schematics and shit. Fuchs and some of the other spies, unlike Julian and Ethel Rosenberg, the famous Cold War espionage case, Fuchs and like Harry Gold and shit were not sentenced to death. It wasn't treason, simply espionage, because the US and the USSR had been allies while the spying had taken place.
Interesting.
Yeah. Fuchs was sentenced to 14 years in prison. I believe he wrote a book and shit, too. Fuchs did it because he was a true believer in communism. And he thought old Joe Stalin was just great. And that the party should be obeyed without question. Literally, those are his words.
Yeah.
Like, so fucking stupid.
Why did I do it?
I really believed... He says, like, orders. I believed that the party should be obeyed without question. That they knew better. Like, what the fuck? Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, okay, America bad and shit. But Joe Stalin real fucking bad.
I think we can agree on that.
Yeah. I'm sure we can't, but we should be able to.
Yeah.
It's objectively true.
Yeah.
It's objectively true. And honestly, having this nuclear hegemony broken so soon put the whole damn world in a real precarious place. And Edward Teller just had the biggest boner you can imagine.
Yeah.
You had to do that belt trick. You know the one like he used to have to do in math class?
No.
I'm talking to the they know.
They
know. The one you used to do in math class.
All right.
It was a belt trick. Like sometimes you just got the spontaneous boners in school. You had to like sharpen your pencil.
Right.
You had to like wiggle
Move
a bit
flow
first.
Of blood.
Well, no, you just like kind of tuck that thing up under the belt.
Oh, okay.
So you could go sharpen your pencil, but like everyone still knew. It's the old belt trick.
I have to say, a lot of years in school, never noticed a boner. And I don't
think anyone actually ever noticed.
Yeah. And believe me, I looked at crotches.
Yeah. I believe you.
Yeah.
So, Edward Teller had been saying, like, listen, what if they get it soon? And those evil fucking commies, they're not going to have the same restraint that we have. It's true. And yeah, everyone kind of did know that. As I said, like, communism was this new alien system. Mm-hmm. So many of the scientists who had been morally opposed to the development of the super, a lot of them said, fuck, I hate it, but we can't let Joseph Stalin make this thing before us or we're all fucked. Which is true.
Yep.
Which is true. So the arms race was on in earnest.
And then Dr. Seuss wrote a book about it.
Dr. Seuss?
Yeah, right?
But the arms race?
Yeah.
Did he?
Yeah.
What?
That one, the Butter Battle book.
Oh, right. That's right.
Yeah.
You can see how this shit pervades every aspect of our consciousness.
It's true. It's Butter
fucking
Battle.
Crazy. Yeah. So at a meeting of the GAC, I believe that's General Atomic Committee, Oppenheimer apparently told Teller to, unquote, keep his shirt on. Teller would later testify that he had taken a much more mellow response. He said,
my mind did not immediately turn in the direction of working on the thermonuclear bomb. I had, by that time, quite thoroughly accepted the idea that, with the reduced personnel at Los Alamos, it was much too difficult an undertaking.
Fucking bullshit. It's such fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
He would also later testify that Oppenheimer was too crazy to be trusted, and it was Teller's own genius alone that had been responsible, all of which...
Right.
Complete bullshit. Here's Freeman Dyson, a physicist who worked with Teller, talking about his character. And, like, by the way, this is a dude who considered Edward Teller a friend.
No relation to the vacuum?
Maybe, actually.
And the interaction with Teller was delightful because we fought like cats. He's a very emotional guy, as is well known. And so when we disagreed, he would very often just go off in a huff and throw a tantrum and say, I'm going to quit if I don't get my way. And then Freddie de Hoffman would be scared because he didn't want to lose Edward Teller. So Freddie would then decide that things had to be done the way Teller wanted. So he would always win the argument by throwing a tantrum. But I was quite happy because I knew it would all pass over in a couple of days. And it was just an interesting human spectacle to watch Teller in action. And so I never took it personally. And then in 2 days, Teller would have forgotten or he'd have a new brilliant idea. And we'd all be happily working together again.
Sounds great.
Wow.
Sounds so great.
By the way, no relation to the vacuum, but apparently he did receive a lot of hate mail from people that were dissatisfied with their vacuums, and he thought it was hilarious and would respond.
That's so funny. That's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah.
Wow, I love all that.
But, like, it's funny because he did, like, there's something called the Dyson sphere. And it's like,
oh yeah, he's the guy behind the Dyson sphere.
Right. So maybe the vacuum is probably named after him, but he has no relation to it.
Yeah. Well, a Dyson sphere is the idea of building energy collectors around a star to harness the full power of a star, I believe. I think that's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
So they probably did get their name inspired from him.
They could have, or could have just been like one of the dudes built the vacuum's last name and be like, hey, we should just use your last name because it sounds like Dyson.
Yep.
But yeah, that's probably exactly what happened.
That is what happened.
Hell yeah. And yeah, we know that like Teller's like whole measured attitude act was bullshit because all the other people who wanted the super were now frothing at the mouth too. William Golden wrote,
I was able to read enough Italian in the headlines of the paper to see that President Truman announced that the Russians had exploded a nuclear device, and I stayed up all night. I was so struck with that, I stayed up writing a letter to Louis Strauss. I set forth some observations. I thought they were probably superfluous, but one thing I wrote him was, we, the USA, should intensify our efforts toward development of superweapons. This is much more important than an increase in production rate of existing weapons. A quantum jump in intensity is called for, as a matter of urgency comparable in every way to the wartime Manhattan Project. This I regard as urgent and of supreme importance.
Here's the goddamn thing. I get how it happened. I do. I don't necessarily think you can keep a genie from coming out of a bottle when it's quite clear that the genie wants out.
Yeah, everybody's pushing for it.
The hard part was inventing the first bomb, and everyone knew that. There's some mechanic of the metaphysics of human progress that will just simply not let you keep the cork on that fucking bottle.
No.
Yeah.
Once something is created, we like to make really big versions of it and figure out how to scale it up, and we also like to figure out how to scale things down as small as we can. That's just something that humans like to do.
Yeah.
We made it. How can we make it bigger? How can we make it smaller?
Mm-hmm. One person who opposed the building of the super was Atomic Energy Commission head David Lilienthal, who found the entire concept of nuclear weapons obscene. He had in 1948 denounced the, quote, keen enthusiasm of the Los Alamos scientists, writing in his diary,
I don't object at all to expressions of satisfaction that the job is being pushed and done well, but that there should not even be a single token expression of profound concern and regret that we're engaged in developing weapons directed against the indiscriminate destruction of defenseless men, women, and children. This bothered me.
David Lilienthal, good man.
Yeah.
And like a lot of them just ended up getting fired for being good men.
Right.
Louis Strauss, a commissioner for the Atomic Energy Commission, disagreed with Lilienthal. He wrote,
It seems to me that the time has now come for a quantum jump in our planning. To borrow a metaphor from our scientist friends, that is to say that we should now make an intensive effort to get ahead with the super. By intensive effort, I'm thinking of a commitment in talent and money comparable, if necessary, to that which produced the first atomic weapon. That's the way to stay ahead.
Strauss passed from the morning Atomic Energy Commission meeting directly to lunch with his fellow Rear Admiral Sidney Sewers. Half a decade later, Sewers remembered the occasion well. He wrote,
Strauss came to me shortly after the Russians had exploded their atomic bomb. I didn't know anything about this super bomb, this H-bomb, until Strauss came into my office then. Strauss looked upon me as a fellow security man and asked me whether the president had ever had any information on the super bomb, and if he had he made a decision with regard to going ahead with it. I said, Louis, as far as I know, he has had none. None from me, anyway. Can we build one? Strauss said, yes. And I said, then why in the world don't we build it? He said, well, I don't think the president has been informed because Lilienthal is opposed to it. And I said, you should certainly see that it gets to the president so that he can get the facts and make a decision. The next morning at our meeting, I told the president about this conversation. I asked him if he had any information on it. He said, no, but you tell Strauss to go to it and fast. I did call Strauss. I told him I had thought about it overnight and that he should expedite it. With that, he got busy.
Until October 6, 1949, the President of the United States had never heard of the hydrogen bomb. On January 31st, 1950, Harry Truman gave the go-ahead, and a new project at Los Alamos was born. Edward Teller was just thrilled when they called his ass up and said, so, how's your research been progressing with that whole Campbell's soup idea you had? Harry Truman, however, has never been accused of being the sharpest tool in the shed. For immediately upon giving the go-ahead to start work on it, Truman announced to the entire world via television that the U.S. was building a super bomb.
Good.
There was a bit of a problem, though, because the scientists working on it had no idea how to build a working thermonuclear bomb.
Okay.
It was literally Edward Teller's pet jerk-off idea. And Harry Truman just
told everyone
announces to everybody that we're doing it, which informs the Soviets that it's possible.
So now they're going to start doing it.
Now they're going to start doing it because they are one of the countries with the best nuclear physicists in the fucking world.
The Pais effect.
What?
No, this just reminds me of the theory that we had in our first episode.
Oh, yeah.
About how, like, why did they release these plans for these supposed,
right.
Like, aircraft that can do all of these fucking things, these supposed secret documents from other, like, and I think that it's this sort of the same concept.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think Harry Truman is just an idiot, honestly.
Yeah, that too.
A lot of the scientists were aghast. Mm-hmm. They thought it was the most embarrassing shit.
Yeah. But now once that idea is out there, you know, it doesn't even necessarily have to be plans, but just a statement.
Yeah. Well, the Russians were definitely already working on it.
Yeah.
Because it was easy.
It accelerates the process, right?
It was just a real easy. Everyone knew that you could do it. You know, that's what's really fucked up about this whole thing. It was like, it didn't require any real genius to come up with the principle of the hydrogen bomb. It was already kind of there.
Once something is put out there in theory, you know, then that opens the process for it to start being put into practice.
Yeah. And much more so once you crack the egg of the basic principle.
Yep. And you have the technology to do it.
Yeah. Like, it was much harder to make the atomic bomb than it was to make the hydrogen bomb.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, well, actually, we did that shit real fast too. But the foundation work had been laid over decades prior. Now, the technical aspects of the hydrogen bomb are way too much for us idiots to explain in any meaningful detail.
Duh.
Take our word for it, though, it's a hell of a lot more complicated than the first generation atomic bombs. I mean, it uses an atomic bomb as the firing pin to set off the real bomb. That's stupid. Everything about that is stupid.
Yeah, like the atomic bomb is just like the appetizer.
Yeah, it's a tiny pinprick black powder cap on the real deal.
Yeah.
One Walmart versus 500 Walmarts. You know?
Yeah.
There's a difference. The term fusion versus fission, like we said, comes from splitting atoms versus using the energy released from fusing atoms, which is much greater and capable of more sustain than simple fission. And scientists working on it generally agreed that there was no upward limit on how destructive you could make a thermonuclear device, provided you had enough fuel.
So let's see how far we can take it.
Yeah, there's no ceiling on however much fuel you can get. That's how big you can make it. That's just a principle of it. Like, there's no upward limit on a thermonuclear bomb.
Yep.
Yeah. The fuel is hydrogen isotopes. An isotope is an element with extra neutrons. Do you know how atoms are made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons?
Yes.
Protons are positively charged. They're at the nucleus. Electrons are negatively charged. They're orbiting. Neutrons are neutrally charged.
Right.
They're also at the nucleus and make up the kind of weight. They're arranged on the periodic table by how many fucking protons they have. I think that's right. Something about that. I'm pretty sure. Hydrogen is element 1.
Yeah.
Hydrogen has 1 proton and 1 electron. Simple as. Real basic stuff. Hydrogen, most abundant fucking element in the universe. It's the most basic ass element.
Yeah. That's why it's number 1?
Yep. It's the most abundant because it's the most basic. It's just basic element. Basic shit in the universe is hydrogen. It has a bunch of isotopes, though. The two important ones are called tritium and deuterium. Deuterium, or heavy water, which is a more common term, has 1 proton, 1 neutron, and 1 electron. It's also stable, but it takes a bit to produce. You'll see sometimes, like, for example, like Iran accused of they might be producing heavy water. It was thought that maybe Germany was making heavy water. Like, that's deuterium. It's a hydrogen isotope used to fuel the hydrogen bomb.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Does that come from like the same root as like Deuteronomy?
Probably. I mean, deuter just means 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got like a weight of 2, whereas and tritium has 3.
Word.
Yeah. Tritium, which to put it in a way that's immediately understandable to our audience, tritium was seen as the real fucking juice.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the juice. It's got 1 proton and 2 neutrons.
Okay, 3. Try.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, got it.
Super expensive and complicated to produce, and it's not stable. But it's that straight gas. The important thing to remember is that the fuel matters, and the fuel is expensive. One of the early ideas was to make this giant fuck-off thermonuclear bomb that was too big to be loaded onto a plane. You take this thing, you put it on a barge, right? You put it on a ship. We're going to float that thing at the Soviet Union and then blow it up. But the thing is, because the USSR is mostly landlocked, at least the important parts, you make this bomb so goddamn big that it can damage key Soviet sites from the ocean. The theoretical damaging radius of this thing was 1,000 miles.
That's big.
That's stupid.
I don't know how many Walmarts that is.
That's too many Walmarts. That's beyond the Walmart scale. That's the Walmarts and their parking lots, all of them. But that's where their heads were at when they started working on this thing, right? The thing, that wouldn't even get tested. It would end up getting way more refined. You think about, like, that's a stupid idea. No one would ever take that seriously. Like, you'd end up damaging so many allied countries and shit, right? What are you looking at?
I'm trying to figure out how many super Walmarts are in a mile, but I'm listening to you actively.
Are you?
Yes. I'm literally doing the math. Apparently, one supercenter is approximately 187,000 square feet.
Right, but like we're talking about supercenters from the perspective of covering them in TNT. Like,
I know, so I'm approximating that to how many super Walmarts are in a mile.
So now you're trying to use the Walmarts for the distance measurement too?
I'm listening.
No matter what they were going to build, the thing was, and would be for the next few years, that Edward Teller's plan for a super bomb didn't seem to work. Mm-hmm. Couldn't get it right. But his ass was just so fucking confident in his own genius that he blamed everything but his own plans. Although he knew that they needed some new technology to make it happen. Specifically, they needed the Maniac computer, invented by John von Neumann, who was the father of game theory, which wouldn't be done for some time to do the necessary calculations. So, like, the Maniac was the successor to the ENIAC, the first digital computer. It's really interesting to me that the thermonuclear bomb needed computer science to happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like right at the very beginning of computer science, it made a real big boom.
Of course.
You know, like... Of course. Yeah. Stanislaw Ulam, the Polish scientist whose name adorns the final design of the hydrogen bomb alongside Teller, the Teller-Ulam configuration, he developed the Monte Carlo method, named after a gambling game, for running simulations that involved throwing dice to simulate the randomness you'd find in actual nuclear reactions. This was slow as fuck and didn't work well, but these guys were literally just like throwing dice and then taking the random result and putting in their calculation.
Throwing darts at a board, basically.
Essentially, because they didn't have a computer to simulate the randomness.
Yeah.
With the Maniac, that's when they were able to do it. Initially, the idea was to use the heat from the first stage fission bomb to trigger the nuclear fusion, but it wasn't working. And right in the middle of all this, the Korean War happened.
Yeah.
The buildup and causes and shit of the Korean War is far outside the scope of this episode, but Jesus fucking Christ. The first stages of the Korean War were some of the most insane shit. We usually hear about Korea like, oh, that's that one my grandfather was in. You know, the lame one.
Right, the one that nobody knows anything about.
Yeah, the Forgotten War. It's not forgotten because it's lame. Quite the opposite, in fact.
Yeah.
I always thought of Korean War as Vietnam without all the cool parts. Like psychedelic drugs and rock and roll and civil unrest. Uh-huh. There was just blood in Korea. Just blood. Just buckets and buckets of blood. Basically, just like with East and West Germany, Korea was divided with the communists up north, backed by the Soviet Union, and the new kid on the block, the People's Republic of China, and then the US and UN backed South Korea, which was also an authoritarian autocratic state, but they were our friends. Usually nowadays, when the UN tries to do anything, because China, the Soviet Union, and the US are all on the Security Council, nothing ever gets done by the UN. Just so happened, China was too new, and the Soviet Union was actively boycotting the UN at the time.
Yeah.
So they didn't veto it on the Security Council. And so the UN, quote unquote, was the army that went into Korea, except it was fielded by mostly US troops and commanded by the US. And that's kind of why we didn't have to declare war. It didn't go to Congress. There was no congressional vote on it, just like in Vietnam. We just did it. When Truman was asked by our reporter, like, "Are we at war, Mr. President?" He's like, no, it's not a war. And the reporter was like, "So what is this, like a police action?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure."
Okay.
And so it forever became called a police action afterwards. And anyone who's listened to Dan Carlin's The Destroyer of Worlds knows I ripped that right from there. But you already know. But hey, yeah. Carlin didn't talk about the science like at all. He only talked about the politics. I don't know what I'm talking about here, but it's only a very brief overview of the politics. If you want 5 hours on the bomb, you know where to go. It's not here.
And if you want to know how many Walmarts are in a mile,
that you come to us for.
It's 149.
Really?
Yeah.
It's a lot of Walmarts. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow, we blew up a lot of Walmarts.
Seriously. Also, so the Dyson vacuum thing, that's a dead end. But Hoover vacuum? Hoover vacuums, does that have anything to do with President Herbert Hoover?
Or J. Edgar?
It does.
Which one?
Herbert. Is involved in that.
Like the Hoover Dam.
Yeah. So there's a tie between our our government and vacuum cleaners.
Interesting.
I knew I could find one.
How does Hoover relate?
Herbert W. Hoover Sr. took over as president of the company in 1922.
Is that his dad?
I think so.
No shit. Huh. Herbert Hoover sucked.
Yeah.
He was a bad president. A lot of them were. But yeah, Korean War wasn't actually a war. No war declared. Police action. 3 million people died in the Korean War. 3 million. Basically, every city in Korea was obliterated. Reduced to nothing. It was a fucking mess.
Yeah.
It was also a super precarious situation. The U.S. didn't want war with the Soviets because that meant nuclear war. The Soviets didn't want war with the U.S. because that meant nuclear war. Beginning stages, the battle lines of the Korean War were swinging like across the entire country. At one point, the South Koreans got pushed all the way back to like a single bay right at the top tip of the peninsula. It was fucking nuts. It is seriously one of the most horrifying and apocalyptic wars you can read about. It's real fucked up. It's kind of strange we didn't use nukes. It's kind of fucking weird.
We had them.
We had them.
Yeah.
We had a lot of them. We had enough to use. We didn't have the stockpile we would have, but we had them. We had just used them 5 years ago. Well, why didn't we? It seems like the mistake you would make. It would be a mistake, to be sure, I think. But it seems like the mistake you would fucking make.
This is a good time for me to bring up that I was mistaken again. That Herbert Hoover, no relation to President.
No relation?
No.
How about that?
President Herbert Hoover's father's name is Jesse. No relation whatsoever. I'm going to keep looking into this vacuum thing.
I think you need to let it rest.
Oh, not tonight, but in the future.
Okay. I'll look forward. The secret history of vacuum cleaners.
The secret history of vacuums is coming. It'll be on a bonus episode.
Yeah. That's what
I'll find some juicy shit.
So, Curtis LeMay, head of Strategic Air Command. George C. Scott's character in Dr. Strangelove is based off Curtis LeMay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He had control of the nuclear arsenal. He thought that the immoral choice in war was to use less force than necessary and to prolong the struggle. His ass was responsible for the firebombing of Tokyo and quite a few other incidents that killed hundreds of thousands of civilians. He reasoned that in war people die, and you should make wars end on your terms as fast as possible. To prolong it just meant more death. You want to get it over with. Get the killing over with. Like, that's the moral choice.
Sure.
He wanted to nuke the fuck out of Korea. One of the main reasons, if not the biggest reason we didn't, is not out of morality.
Yeah.
It's because we were afraid. Well,
more of a tactical move.
We had used the bomb, right?
Yeah.
But it was not in a combat setting. It was a demonstration. The only times the bomb had been used was as psychological warfare.
Right, to say, look what we have.
Right. It worked because of the statement it made.
Right.
The fear was that using the bomb in an actual conflict would lessen its usefulness. Like, it ended World War II as a weapon of psychological warfare, more or less. If it just becomes a really big bomb, like if you use it and it doesn't end the war, then it just becomes a really big bomb. It loses the symbolic and psychological power completely.
Right.
It just becomes another weapon, which is probably what would have happened. Because the bombs we dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki destroyed 4 square miles. That's nothing on the grand scheme of things. It's nothing. There's 9 people who survived both of those. There's a book called 9 Who Survived Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah.
You can survive a fission bomb. You can duck and cover and survive. It's a big bomb. Again, not to downplay it, but like it's possible. Not if you're in like the 1 mile radius, like right below it, but like.
But yeah.
But if it becomes just a really big bomb, it loses the symbolic and psychological power. And almost the opposite was true for the hydrogen bomb.
So before we continue,
sure,
I want to make another relation back to that abusive relationship metaphor.
Sure, yeah.
This is very much like that really big bomb that has psychological power is like that abusive partner that holds suicide over their partner's head.
Fuck. Well, that's the mutually assured destruction of the 60s.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, if you hurt me, I'll blow myself up, which will blow you up too, because you'll be hurt by that.
Right. Well, I mean,
you'll have to deal with the fallout.
If you think about like how geopolitics is played, like it's just extensions of human psychology.
Yeah.
So it will be these same things, these same tactics, these same themes and shit.
Mm-hmm. That's what it made me think of.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is more like at this time, the U.S. wasn't thinking about mutually assured destruction.
Right.
We thought we could just take the belt off and start whipping, you know? But almost the opposite was true for the hydrogen bomb, about size and whether it would be useful and whether it would lose its psychological power. Problem with the hydrogen bomb is you might be able to make it too big. Like if it's too big, chances are your ass ain't going to use it.
Right. So then it's like, well, you're not going to do that.
Right. The bluff's easier to call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not really going to fucking kill yourself.
Right. You're not gonna.
My ass is out the door. I don't care anymore.
Yeah, fuck you. I'll launch my smaller bombs at you. What are you going to do? Kill us both? Fuck you. I'm just trying to take Korea. You want to extend this thing to the whole fucking world?
Right.
Go fuck yourself. Kind of a problem. Mm-hmm. That's kind of an actual strategic problem. And now Eisenhower's president. Truman's gone.
Okay.
Eisenhower's president. Stanislav Ulam came to Edward Teller with the idea that instead of using only the heat to trigger the second stage fusion reaction, if you remember from like high school science, they did like heat and pressure are the same thing, right? The higher the pressure, the higher the heat, the higher the heat, the higher the pressure. You don't just rely on the heat. First, you got to use compression.
Yeah.
And this was Stanislav Ulam's big breakthrough idea. If anyone should actually get sole credit, they should probably be Stanislav Ulam. But Teller came up with the idea to use a sort of reflective shield around the whole thing in a cryogenic fucking vacuum tube encasement to bounce back X-rays from the first bomb and other science shit, right? A bunch of other science shit.
It's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, to collapse shit onto this deuterium and tritium mass. The calculations worked. And in May of 1951, they tested the first tritium-boosted atomic bomb in Operation Greenhouse. This was just a little bit of tritium added to see if they could get the fusion reaction to occur at all.
Yeah.
So it was technically the first fusion, but it doesn't really count as the first bomb. Now, the hydrogen bomb would be referred to as the Teller-Ulam design. Oh, that's also where thermonuclear comes from? Mm-hmm. Because using the compression and the heat to trigger this second stage reaction. Yeah, it would be referred to as the Teller-Ulam configuration, which is actually a pretty cool name. The way it sounds, Teller-Ulam configuration, as the name of a death machine.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. But Teller would do literally everything he fucking could to take credit away from Stanislav Ulam.
Of course.
For the rest of his very long life, he lived to like 97.
Oh, it's always the worst people.
To like the fucking 90s, dude. It just sucks. Teller was known as the father of the hydrogen bomb, which a nickname he rejected, but only in like a, oh, stop it kind of way. Many of the people around him didn't see his contributions as in any way a standout from what the rest of the scientists working on it had contributed.
Right. It's like, why does your name need to be the one?
Literally, because
I'm the loudest.
So Operation Greenhouse and the next test would occur in the South Pacific Islands, the ones we had kind of rolled over during the Pacific theater of the Second World War. Operation Greenhouse and the next one would occur on Eniwetok Atoll in the Marshall Islands. And it worked, and they successfully achieved a little bit of fusion with a tritium-boosted bomb. The first successful uncontrolled release of nuclear fusion energy, which only made up a small fraction of the 225 kilotons total yield. However, it raised expectations to a near certainty that this concept would work. And now they could build the fucking thing in earnest. The first test of a true hydrogen bomb occurred on November 1st, 1952, as part of what was called Operation Ivy.
I know things are getting tougher when you can't get the top off the bottom of the barrel. Wide open, bright my future now. Looking fucking new. All I know is that I don't know. All I know is that I don't know nothing. All I know is that I don't know. All I know is that I don't know nothing. We get up to this side. Just like as if I'm not gonna change my mind. All I know is that I don't know. All I know is that I don't know nothing. All I know is that I don't know. All I know is that I don't know nothing.
All I know is that I don't know nothing.
Yeah, I mean, they named their band after the Operation Ivy test because they're very angry. Operation Ivy consisted of two separate tests. The second one, Ivy King, was a really big fission bomb, so fuck that, it doesn't matter. The first one, Ivy Mike, as it was called, was far too large to be a deliverable weapon. You weren't going to drop this thing out of a fucking plane. But Edward Teller thought that only a full-scale megaton test would demonstrate the feasibility of the weapon.
Okay.
Yeah. J. Robert Oppenheimer, for his part, had wobbled again and now did not think this weapon should be made at all. He convened a panel to try and get the test delayed, but it was no use. Teller would remember this, and that may have been why he fucked over Oppenheimer a few years later. So, at the center of Ivy Mike was a cylindrical insulated steel vacuum flask, basically a thermos. It's the same thing as a thermos that keeps your coffee warm in the winter.
Yeah.
7 feet across and more than 20 feet in length. Had walls about 30 centimeters thick, about a foot thick.
Big thermos.
Big thermos. It weighed approximately 54 short tons or 49 metric tons. It was capable of holding 1,000 liters of liquid deuterium, cooled to near absolute zero. The cryogenic deuterium provided the fuel for the secondary fusion stage of the explosion.
Some cold deuterium.
Yep. At one end of the cylindrical dewar flask was a TX-5 regular fission bomb, not boosted. The TX-5 bomb was used to create the conditions needed to initiate the fusion reaction. The primary fission stage was nested inside the radiation case at the upper section of the device and was not in physical contact with the secondary fusion stage. The TX-5 did not require refrigeration. Running down the center of the dewar flask within the secondary was a cylindrical rod of plutonium within a chamber of tritium gas. That provided a source of outward-moving pressure inside the deuterium and increased conditions for the fusion reaction. Surrounding the assembly was a 5 short-ton natural uranium tamper. The exterior of the tamper was lined with sheets of lead and polyethylene, forming a radiation channel to conduct X-rays from the primary to the secondary stage. Basically, the thing that the spark flies down on in a 50 caliber black powder rifle. Just a tube to collect the shit, to light the shit on fire. As laid out in the Teller-Ulam design, the function of the X-rays was to compress the secondary with tamper-pusher ablation, foam plasma pressure, and radiation pressure. This process increases the density and temperature of the deuterium to the level needed to sustain a thermonuclear reaction and compress the spark plug to a supercritical mass, inducing the spark plug to undergo nuclear fission and thereby start a fusion reaction in the surrounding deuterium fuel.
This is surprisingly interesting to me.
Right.
Usually all
I know.
These words would mean nothing.
I know.
But since we have like these metaphors running in the background that I can relate these things to, it's a lot easier for me to understand. So like
And also it's just like science shit.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what the fuck this means.
Right. No, but like the thermo part of it, how temperature plays a reaction in creating
temperature and pressure and using temperature to create more pressure.
Right.
Yeah.
And how that's also usually how in life we make the greatest breakthroughs is when we're placed in these like pressure chambers and we're pushed on really, really fucking hard. And it's like, are you going to get out or not?
Or we break.
Yeah. Or exactly. But if we get out, you know, we create something new.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also alchemy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I've been thinking of this entire time.
Yeah. It's the end result of alchemy.
Yep.
Yeah. So the entire mic device, including the cryogenic equipment, 82 short tons or 74 metric tons, it was housed in a large corrugated aluminum building called the shot cab, which was 88 feet long, 46 feet wide, and 61 feet high. With a 300-foot signal tower, television and radio signals were used to communicate with the control room on the USS Estes, where the firing party was located. The test was carried out on November 1st, 1952 at 7:15 a.m. local time. It doesn't play well for radio because, like, the spectacular part's the visual.
Yes.
You know? But I do kind of want to just get a sense of the vibe. Because they made this shit into propaganda footage. Just why not, you know?
Yep.
Wiser. You have a grandstand seat here to one of the most momentous events in the history of science. In less than a minute, you will see the most powerful explosion ever witnessed by human eyes. The blast will come out of the horizon just about there. And this is the significance of the moment. This is the first full-scale test of a hydrogen device. If the reaction goes, we're in the thermonuclear era. For the sake of all of us, and for the sake of our country, I know that you join me in wishing this expedition well.
It is now 30 seconds to zero time. Put on goggles or turn away. Do not remove goggles or face burst until 10 seconds after the first light.
Minus 15 seconds. Minus 10 seconds. 9er, 8, 7, 6, 5er, 4, 3, 2, 1, T0.
It is a spectacular and awe-inspiring visual, the likes of which is, it's beautiful. There's like, it's a gorgeous visual phenomenon. I can't say otherwise. Like,
cosmic.
Yeah. The fireball created by the explosion had a maximum radius of 2.9 to 3.3 kilometers, or 1.8 to 2.1 miles. The maximum radius was reached a number of seconds after the detonation, during which the hot fireball lifted up due to buoyancy. So it blows up on the ground and then slowly lifts up. Like, just,
Yeah. Very alien.
Yeah. While still relatively close to the ground, the fireball had yet to reach its maximum dimensions, and thus was approximately 3.2 miles wide. The mushroom cloud rose to an altitude of 17 kilometers, or 56,000 feet, roughly 10 miles, in less than 90 seconds. 1 minute later, it had reached 33 kilometers, or 108,000 feet, before stabilizing at 41 kilometers, or 135,000 feet, with the top eventually spreading out to a diameter of 161 kilometers, 100 miles, with the stem 32 kilometers, or 20 miles wide.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So many Walmarts.
So many Walmarts. We're talking in the
unfathomable now.
Hundreds of millions of Walmarts just stacked on top of each other. Now it's too many Walmarts.
Now it's not even a useful scale.
Now not even the Walmart scale is useful.
It's not. It's too abstract.
It's too abstract now. Yeah. There's no way to comprehend it.
Yeah.
It's actually just the miles is probably better than the Walmarts at this point, to be perfectly honest. Yeah. The blast created a crater like 1.2 miles in diameter. A crater 2 kilometers wide and 50 meters deep, 164 feet deep.
Holy shit.
Where Yuga Lab had once been, the lab where the blast and water wave.
Not anymore.
No. The blast and water waves from the explosion, some waves up to 20 feet tall, stripped the test islands clean of vegetation.
Like, didn't they know this was going to happen?
Nope.
Like, wasn't this the point?
No, they had no idea. They had no idea what was going to happen. They didn't know if it was going to work. But it was just the stupid Pacific Islands. Like, fuck those. Like, only 20 people live there. Fuck them.
Get rid of it.
And by 20 people, we mean like a couple thousand, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone lived on this island, but we're going to talk about Castle Bravo in a second.
God.
Yeah, so 20-foot waves like stripped the test islands clean of vegetation. All gone. As observed by a helicopter survey within 60 minutes after the test, by which time the mushroom cloud and steam were blown away. Radioactive coral debris fell upon ships positioned 35 miles away, and the immediate area around the atoll was heavily contaminated. Close to the fireball, lightning discharges were rapidly triggered. The ship made lightning happen, too.
Wow.
Lots of things make lightning happen. Volcanoes do, too. It's just electricity, but it's still spectacular.
Yeah.
You would kind of expect it to make lightning happen, but Edward Teller wasn't there. He didn't see it in person, which is hilarious to me. He was in California, but received confirmation that the test was a success because he was watching a fucking seismometer that recorded the shockwave moving through the Earth. Teller sent an unclassified telegram to Dr. Elizabeth Graves, confirming the test had been a success with just the words, "It's a boy." And read as much symbolism into that as you'd like. It's there.
Like, with how many forest fires have been caused by gender reveal parties?
That's funny. Yeah.
It's a boy.
And also, I mean, it's a lot of...
And honestly, if the bomb was a boy or a girl, it's a boy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. It's sort of representative of unchained masculinity, or the masculine element as the Two of Wands.
Yeah.
Right? The neutron flux, which is a phrase that exists, that's a term that means things. That's a fucking thing that happened to an island. The neutron flux at the blast site ended up creating two predicted but previously undiscovered elements. Elements 99 and 100, einsteinium and fermium, respectively. Also, the small island that it was shot from, gone. Just gone. That crater, 164 feet deep crater, that's just in the ocean.
God. Also, I love that this means that Einstein and Fermi were both like, oh, new elements. Name them after, or... They didn't?
No, they were named in honor of them.
Okay.
Yeah, they didn't...
I don't know if I would want my name in honor of that, but cool.
I mean, these were elements
Fermi was involved.
Yeah, Fermi was a bit of a dickhead. He was a bit... I don't know if I want to call him a dick. He was a bit too gung-ho for my taste. Mm-hmm. Einstein was just smart as fuck, so he was on the Manhattan Project, but he didn't show up at all in the book I read for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't know. I'd be like, maybe a different element.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is that, like, these elements at this ass end of the periodic table, like...
I guess this is really cool.
You would know that the only way you'd be able to make these on Earth is through a fusion reaction.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it would be expected that that's the thing that would make those.
Interesting.
But yeah, and the island was just fucking gone. Now, a couple months after Ivy Mike, Andrea Puharich would contact the Nine. A couple months after that, CIA would begin MK Ultra. I misspoke. It said MK Ultra started in 1952 earlier. It was 1953. It was a couple months after, within the same 12-month period. Fuck you, sue me.
I will.
Yeah. Earlier, in October of 1952, United Kingdom became the third nuclear power, testing a 25 kiloton device in Operation Hurricane.
Oh, good.
Fuck off. A few months prior to that, Jack Parsons blew himself up in a makeshift lab in a house in Pasadena. It would be the fuel he discovered that would, less than a decade later, support the real terror of nuclear war. Intercontinental ballistic missiles, but that's not for some years. It's interesting to me that Jack Parsons died before the hydrogen bomb exploded, being the explosives guy after all. And what I've read from him, and I've read a lot of his writings, he didn't write much about the atomic bomb at all, which is also surprising to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I'm surprised more magicians haven't described the hydrogen bomb as the coming of Babylon. Mm-hmm. It seems like something they would do. Not something I would do, but something they would do.
Right.
I, in fact, wouldn't describe it that way. But it is also intensely poetic that Jack Parsons did not live to see that. Mm-hmm. In August of 1953, the Soviets proved that, oh shit, once you have nukes, it's actually pretty quick to make thermonuclear weapons, no matter what your economic system is. Their first thermonuclear weapon was less powerful than the second test of Operation Ivy, which was just the big fission bomb, but they had done it. It was not the Teller-Ulam configuration, but a so-called layer cake design of Soviet invention. Also, Joseph Stalin was dead as shit, and the Soviet Union was now in the hands of the much, much less insane Nikolai Khrushchev, which also means much more dangerous. Many U.S. generals, under now Eisenhower, thought that the only way to win a war against the Soviet Union was to hit them first, before they had a fully functional thermonuclear arsenal. Preventative war, they called it.
Yeah.
Curtis LeMay was allegedly doing shit on his own to try and provoke the Russians, flying planes way too close and in aggressive maneuvers. Eisenhower shut that shit down, though. In early 1954, the U.S. began the most infamous of its nuclear testing programs, Operation Castle. There were quite a few of these tests on the island of Bikini Atoll. But the most infamous, by far and for good reason, is Castle Bravo. Whereas Operation Ivy was simply to build a proof of concept, remember, it was too big to be deliverable. Operation Castle was meant to test deliverable, combat-ready, quote-quote, combat, thermonuclear weapons on the island of Bikini Atoll. About equidistant from Japan, Australia, and Hawaii. Paradise.
Yeah.
Also, not uninhabited. There's all these beautiful little Pacific islands, right? And we just, grabbed a bunch after World War II and used them to test nukes and shit and told the people who lived there to fuck off.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just a thing that happened. But wait, it gets worse.
No, it always does.
This gets real worse. So the Castle devices, instead of using the hydrogen isotopes as fuel, it used enriched lithium, which is a mixture of lithium-6 and lithium-7. Lithium-6 was the juice. But the mix was only 40% lithium-6 because it's harder to get, and so was padded out with lithium-7, which was assumed to be inert. That is, wouldn't juice. I'm sure you see where this is going. Mm-hmm. The predicted yield of Castle Bravo was 6 megatons, which, by the way, is still a fucking nightmare bomb. On March 1st, 1954, when Castle Bravo fired, those observing immediately knew something went unspeakably wrong. The light was so bright that those covering their eyes with their hands saw the bones of their hands glowing through their skin.
Oh.
They felt heat that they described as like a blowtorch running over their skin. They were 30 miles away.
Holy fuck.
Yeah. Only 2 seconds after the detonation, the fireball was 4.5 miles in diameter. It lit fires... it lit fires like 10 to 20 miles away. Mm-hmm. It could be seen from 250 miles away.
Oh, that's big.
The explosion damaged things in an approximately 60-mile diameter, the same distance as that between the Earth and space. In 10 minutes, the mushroom cloud was 25 miles high. The crater left on Bikini Atoll was 6,000 feet wide and 250 feet deep. The shockwave circled the planet 3 times. The night before, the wind had been blowing north, over uninhabited open ocean. That morning, though, it shifted to the east over about 3 inhabited islands. But was still considered to be, end quote, acceptable levels of fallout.
Acceptable to who?
Those acceptable levels of fallout included the homes of thousands of people who lived in the Marshall Islands.
Not to them, I'm sure.
Later declassified reports gave the count at over 1,300 cases of radiation-induced illness. Cervical cancer rates went up 60 times. Lung, breast, bone cancer rates went up by 10 times or so. There's a Japanese fishing boat, the Lucky Dragon, that was in the path of the fallout. It got blanketed with radioactive ash, dust from the atomized sand and coral. It should be noted, too, that neither the Lucky Dragon crew nor the Marshall Islands residents knew what the fuck just happened. They didn't know. They weren't told.
Yeah.
They had no fucking idea what was coming out of the sky. So the Japanese fishermen, not knowing, first they heard this fucked up sound, then they saw an island get swallowed by the water, then it started snowing. And so they just started cleaning the snow off their boat with their hands and shit. One fisherman tasted it. Said it didn't taste like anything. All of the Lucky Dragon crew got unbelievably sick.
Yeah.
A few died, and it was over the course of months. Many of the Marshall Island residents had cancer, their birth defects. The U.S. didn't evacuate the residents for 48 hours. And after returning them to their homes, they had to be evacuated again because the whole fucking island chain was poisonous. There was cesium-7 in the goddamn coconut milk.
That's no good.
It's not. And also, like, radiation sickness is when your body is, like, slowly, uncontrollably fucking melting from the inside.
Yeah.
It's literally breaking down. It's radiating energy that just causes shit to go haywire, which in a complex system means it breaks down. It melts. Mm-hmm. It was a fucking nightmare. It was a fucking nightmare. I mean, no poetic exaggeration at all. Castle Bravo, Bikini Atoll was a fucking nightmare. The predicted yield was 6 megatons. What had happened was the lithium-7, the supposedly inert lithium, it actually did ignite. How about that? The yield was 15 fucking megatons. The most powerful bomb the U.S. ever tested. But it was only the 5th most powerful bomb ever tested by anyone.
Yep.
Also, that's the secret history of SpongeBob SquarePants.
I wasn't going to say anything, but it had been on my mind.
It's what it is. Yeah. Bikini Bottom is, it's Bikini Atoll. Yeah. The most powerful hydrogen bomb that we know of ever tested was a Russian device called the Tsar Bomba at 50 megatons. Not too much is known about it, honestly, but the plane that dropped it was almost swallowed by the fireball. They almost died. It's actually quite
surprised
insane.
They didn't.
I am too, yeah. It's speculated that the Tsar Bomba may have been a 3-stage design. That is, in the same way that a hydrogen bomb uses a fission bomb as the firing pin. The Tsar Bomba may have used a hydrogen bomb as the firing pin.
Oh.
Like I said, there's no upper limit on how big you can build these things. And look, we can't go through all the nuclear tests because there's so many of them. There's so many of them, big and small and all sorts of designs. The blowback from Castle Bravo helped shut down nuclear tests, but we kept making weapons. And now lots of countries have them. When Castle Bravo was fired, it was assumed that any nuclear weapon would need to be delivered by plane. But by 1958, when the Soviets launched Sputnik, not only did they show off how space is cool and shit, they also demonstrated that they could put a thermonuclear bomb anywhere on Earth. Nowadays, our arsenal has shrunk dramatically, but don't worry, we can still end fucking everything at any given moment. And so can many other countries too. And also nowadays we have like fun things like a hypersonic missile outfitted with like 20 smaller missiles that can break off each with like a megaton or 2 payload. Shit like that. The bombs are actually getting smaller.
Yeah.
And that should frighten you.
That what I mentioned earlier about scale.
Yeah. The big problem with shit like Bravo and Tsar Bomba is it's just a little too dangerous to use. You might not. But in the 1 or 2 megaton range, well.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's one missile that has 21 megaton bombs that just in a line.
Yeah.
That's what we talk about when we talk about nuclear war now.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's so much more to this story because it's not one story. There's the Cuban Missile Crisis. That's its own story. There's Starfish Prime, which is cool but didn't make the cut. There's Atoms for Peace, which is the dumbest shit ever. There's all the proxy wars. There's the whole fucking Cold War. It's all of history after 1950.
Starfish Prime.
Yeah, that was
it's my favorite sex position.
Yeah. That's high atmospheric nuclear testing. Yeah. Trying to nuke space. Fuck it.
Okay.
Actually, what's interesting in space, nuclear weapons are actually not frightening at all. Like in like ship to ship combat in space, like you're not scared of the nuke. You're scared of the machine gun. The machine gun is what's going to fuck your ship up. Projectiles are way scarier in space than nuclear explosions. I'm a nerd, all right?
Space war.
But yeah, it's all of history after 1950 because the bomb, the thermonuclear bomb is just here now. It's part of us. It looms in the shadows of literally everything we do.
Yeah.
I will say that Edward Teller was sent to work on this thing called Project Plowshare in Alaska, where they were going to use hydrogen bombs to make a new bay in Alaska.
Okay.
That's a real thing they were thinking of doing. Fucking why not?
We had a lot of dumb ideas at one point. It's like, well, we thought about bringing a bunch of hippos over here to farm them for meat. Like, why? No.
I don't know. We'd have to nuke them once they got ornery.
Yeah. Hey, no, we're just going to have wild hippos everywhere? No. Terrible idea.
It's a very bad idea.
Luckily, we didn't do it.
We didn't do Project Plowshare either.
Yeah.
And the thing I wanted to ask when I wanted to do this episode is like, how and why, right?
Yeah.
But the truth is it just happened.
It's kind of inevitable.
Yeah, it seems like it was always going to.
Yeah.
When we look at the decisions made in the early 1950s and even the 1960s and shit, we have to remember that they didn't have 70 years of not ending the fucking world to look back on. For them, the end was imminent. And if they lost control, everything fucking ended.
Yeah.
And like, how far would you go? How many psyops would you run? Where's your ethical line when the world could blow the fuck up tomorrow and that thing that could do it was built last week? It's a rhetorical question because we don't know. We cannot answer that.
Right.
And what does that question do to the collective psyche? I don't have a great answer to that either because, well, we're in it. It did this. Whatever this is, wherever this is going, the bomb is an integral part of that story. It is, for all intents and purposes, a god.
Yeah, and it also is very much like suicide. It's like that it's an end that is there, and we know that it's an option that's available, but we choose not to take it.
In a very real sense, it does represent agency.
Yeah.
Over the natural world.
Over death.
Yeah. And yet, here's the thing. Despite my best efforts, I do remain an optimist. There's the whole Asimov concept of like type 1 civilizations, how extraplanetary civilizations would progress and shit. We're not a type 1 yet. A type 1 civilization, it's a hypothetical alien civilization thing. In this classification, a type 1 civilization needs to have every member of its society be capable of destroying the entire civilization instantaneously and continuously choosing not to do it.
That's exactly what a relationship is.
Yeah. It's exactly what true freedom is. True evolution is. Mm-hmm. True mastery is. We're not there yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I wake up on the wrong side of the bed sometimes, you know. But when you realize that we could have ended civilization in 1954 easily, and there have been 3 generations of people across the globe who haven't, despite many extraordinarily close calls. I don't know. It may go down tomorrow. It could. It always could. That's the whole imminence thing. But every day that we don't, that's a small victory in the struggle for human evolution. Because what else can I do? I'd rather delude myself so I can sleep at night. Go fuck yourself. Come on, I don't know.
It's true, though.
It is.
It's a small victory just to wake up every morning.
Yeah, and...
like, just to survive.
And quite literally, when
there's an end button.
Right.
That you could choose to press.
And we've had 3 generations of people who had control over that end button in extremely trying times on all sides of conflicts.
Yeah.
It hasn't happened.
Right.
If we were as bad as we often think we are, it would have fucking happened.
Yeah.
But it didn't. It's not gonna tomorrow.
Right.
It's not gonna the day after. I don't know. I think it's a test. I think the bomb is a fucking test. One that may blow up in our face one day, but that's the nature of the goddamn thing. It was inevitable. And we have to deal with it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2 of Wands.
2 of Wands. To me, it's very much a card of like contemplation of the future.
I mean, it's a card of action. It is.
Yeah.
It is an active card.
The act of, to me, planning.
Surveying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of staking claim.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's someone who's concerned with a larger picture. I see it as a card that represents...
I mean, it's the founding of an empire.
Yeah.
Yeah, it represents the founding of it. The first step towards that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the 3 of Wands is like the marking out of the boundaries.
Right.
Right. And then the 4 is the coronation. But yeah, I mean, the 2 of Wands is the... Remember, usually you think of like the odd numbers as the masculine numbers and the even numbers as the feminine numbers. At least I generally do in like basic number thinking.
Yeah.
But in tarot, the ones, the aces are Kether, the undifferentiated godhead, right?
Hydrogen.
Yeah. Yeah. Element 1. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Fucking exactly. And the 2s are the first emanation of that, the first pouring of light into the universe. Mm-hmm. And which is like how the 2 of Wands is described always. Like it's
so for the purposes of this episode, it's almost like deuterium. It's that thing that's put inside that middle flask.
I mean, dude, it's let there be light.
Yeah.
The 2 of Wands is the statement, let there be light. Mm-hmm. And that's just
the catalyst for the creation.
And that's just fusion. What the bomb is.
Yeah.
It's the power of God. This is quite lit. It's a light that melts shit and just destroys stuff. It's making a star where people
blinding
used to
light. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was hoping for death. I thought it would be more poetic, but actually the 2 of Wands is just
Either that
just
or
what
the
it is.
Sun could have been good too.
No, the Two of Wands is the best one.
I love it.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's quite literally perfect. That dude's holding a fucking globe. He founded an empire. And however this whole globalization, like the struggles that are going on right now, however this story ends up written, if we survive, we do eventually have a planetary civilization, right? That's just how it goes.
Yep.
And the bomb will be an integral part of that. No matter who wins, it will be an integral part of that story. It has to be an integral part of the story of human evolution by its very fucking nature. Because how else can you gain mastery over something if you don't have the ability to kill yourself?
Right.
Yeah. I just wish it was Oppenheimer that made it.
Yeah.
You know? I didn't even want to play a clip of his stupid fucking ass Edward Teller. Because, like, damn. Well, that's all I got. That's what I got for this episode.
Who put the bop in the bop, 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 who put the ram in... Oh, my God.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much for listening to us.
Yes.
We've done 100 of these fucking things.
If you like what we do, please give us a 5-star rating and review, please. Don't make me beg.
Or give us money. Sign up to our Patreon. $5 a month. Get bonus episodes. Get access to our Discord.
Keeps
and
us
it helps
ad-free.
a lot. I mean, if I gotta fill my head with fucking thermonuclear weapons for 2 fucking weeks, there's lasting damage. I'm not as okay as I was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Patreon is our insurance.
Yeah, it's it'll pay for that fucking nice soft bed.
It ensures that we can do our research.
It honestly does. Yeah. $5 a month. Patreon.com/thenonsensebazaar. We appreciate it. We appreciate everyone that listens to us, everyone that shares it. 100 episodes have been the coolest thing I've ever done in my life. And decided to do at least 100 more.
Hell yeah.
Fuck yeah. All right, guys. Take care of yourselves. Peace out.
Take care.
And we're back here at Perry Island, winding things up. It's been a pleasure to help bring you the story of Operation Ivy, the work of Task Force 132. Now that it's all over, I have sort of an inadequate feeling. There's so much more that could have been said. But then in a presentation of this kind, one can only hope to give the broad brushstroke. And the men who told you the story, we're only able to pick out a few of the many. You get a feeling, even now, that nothing is really over, that this is a breathing spell, like a lull in battle before the next attack. The feeling is on this island, with the men here.
Yes, the coral sands of Eniwetok Atoll have viewed events in the fall of 1952, which less than a year and a half before would have been colossal accomplishments. Today, they are calmly accepted. This is characteristic of the progress being made in the weapons development program. What is new today is old hat tomorrow. And of the day after tomorrow, who knows what these Pacific sands may see?